Dear viewers, in this lecture, we are going to start our discussion about reader response theory with psychoanalytic criticism. The importance of psychology in literary interpretation has long been recognized. Plato and Aristotle, for example, attributed strong psychological influence to literature. Plato saw this influence as essentially baneful. Literature aroused people's emotions, especially those that ought to be stringently controlled. Conversely, Aristotle argued that literature exerted a good psychological influence. In particular, tragedy did, by effecting in audiences a catharsis or cleansing or purging of emotions. Spectators were thus calmed and satisfied, not excited or frenzied after their emotional encounter. Psychoanalytic criticism adopts the method of reading employed by Freud and later theorists to interpret texts. It argues that literary texts, like dreams, express the secret unconscious desires and anxieties of the author, that a literary work is a manifestation of the author's own neuroses. Freud has had an incalculable influence on literary analysis with his theories about the unconscious and about the importance of sex in explaining much human behavior. Critics then have looked to Plato and Aristotle in examining the psychological relations between a literary work and its audience, and to Freud in order to understand the motivations of the characters in the literary work and of the author. If, however, followers of Freud have been more concerned with the unconscious of literary characters and their creators, more recent psychological critics have focused on the unconscious of readers. Normal Holland, one such critic, argues that all people inherit from their mother an identity theme or fixed understanding of the kind of person they are. Whatever they read is processed to make it fit their identity theme. He is of the view that readers interpret texts as expressions of their own personalities or psyches and thereby use their interpretations as a means of coping with life. Despite its emphasis on readers and their psychology, Holland's theory does not deny or destroy the independence of the text. Holland suggests that a text exists as an object and as the expression of another mind, something different from readers themselves. But David Bleich, in subjective criticism, denies that the text exists independent of readers. He is of the view that meaning and objectives of literature are created by the reader, who depends on community consensus to validate his or her judgments. Bleach claims that individuals everywhere classify things into three essential groups: objects, symbols, and people. Literature, a mental creation as opposed to a concrete one, would thus be considered a symbol. A text may be an object in that it is paper and print, but its meaning depends on the symbolization in the minds of readers. Meaning is not found, it is developed by readers. Readers with widely differing views are in a position to discover more about strategies for reading. The last of the theories to be treated in this discussion is Stanley Fish, who calls his technique of interpretation affective stylistics. Like other reader-oriented critics, Fish rebels against the dogmatism of the new critics who assert that a poem is a single, static object, a whole that has to be understood in its entirety at once. Fish argues that meaning in a literary work is not something to be extracted, as a dentist might pull a tooth. Meaning must be negotiated by readers, a line at a time. Moreover, they will be surprised by rhetorical strategies as they proceed. Therefore, meaning happens to readers. During this negotiation, a text can lead readers on, even set them up, to make certain interpretations, only to undercut them later and force them into new and different readings. So the focus is on the reader. However, Fish does insist on a high degree of sophistication in readers. He is of the view that the readers must be familiar with literary conventions and must be mindful of the tricky strategies of the text. His term for such readers is informed. Later, Fish attributed more initiative to the reader and diminished the authority of the text in the interpretive act. It implies that readers actually create a piece of literature as they read it. Therefore, every reading results in a new interpretation. Fish suggests that interpretation is a communal affair. The readers just mentioned are informed, they possess linguistic competence, they form interpretive communities that have common assumptions, and to repeat, they create texts when they pool their common reading techniques. There may be more than one interpretation of a work of literature because interpreters see things differently. But when the meaning of literature is subjugated to individual readers, literary analysis becomes altogether relative. To summarize, two distinguishing features characterize reader response theory. One is the effect of the literary work on the reader. It is judged by determining how the text affects the reader and what role different strategies or devices play to this effect. The second feature is the relegation of the text to secondary importance. The reader is of primary importance. Thus, reader response criticism attacks the authority of the text. This is where subjectivism comes in. If a text cannot have any existence except in the mind of the reader, it loses its authority. There is a shift from objective to subjective perspective. Texts mean what individual readers say they mean or what interpretive communities of readers say they mean. Thus, interpretation becomes the key to meaning as it always is, but without the ultimate authority of the text or the author. To conclude, the important element in reader response criticism is the reader and the effect of the text on the reader. Meaning inheres in the reader and not in the text. Thank you very much.